The music in the lounge kept playing, but the mood in the room had changed. Just a moment ago, everyone had been laughing like the whole thing was harmless entertainment. Now the air felt tight, almost uncomfortable. I slipped my phone back into my pocket and leaned casually against the table, as if nothing unusual had happened. Across from me, Lydia was no longer smiling. Her expression had stiffened, the confident glow she usually carried fading into something harder to read. "Dominic," she said slowly, setting her glass down, "you're taking this way too far." I shrugged lightly. "Am I?" A few people shifted in their seats. Someone coughed awkwardly. The party that had felt so lively seconds ago suddenly felt like a stage where no one knew their next line. Phineas stepped forward again, trying to recover the mood. "Come on, man," he said with a thin laugh. "Everyone knows this was just for fun." His voice sounded smooth, but the tension around his eyes gave him away. I looked at him for a second, then glanced around the room. These were people who spent their lives talking about deals worth millions, yet tonight they had gathered around a silly little punishment like children at a playground. Interesting. My phone vibrated. Once. Then again. And again. The notification sound was soft, but in the sudden quiet of the room it seemed impossibly loud. Someone nearby leaned over slightly, trying to peek at my screen. Curiosity spreads fast in a room full of bored elites. I pulled the phone out again and glanced down. Dozens of messages. Requests. Comments. Apparently the internet moved faster than any of them expected. A small smile tugged at the corner of my mouth. "Well," I said calmly, "looks like there's interest already." That only made the room more restless. One of Lydia's friends scoffed under her breath. "He's bluffing." "Obviously," another whispered. But Lydia wasn't whispering anymore. Her eyes were locked on me, sharp and searching, like she was trying to understand whether I was joking or completely serious. And that was the real problem. Because I was perfectly calm. Not angry. Not embarrassed. Just finished playing along. Another vibration buzzed in my hand. This time I opened the notification. A new message had popped up at the top of the list. Simple. Direct. "I'm nearby. Still looking?" 5 years. That was how long Lydia had been in my life. No one in that room seemed to realize that this night meant more than just a birthday. For them it was champagne, laughter, and another excuse to show off their designer clothes. For me, it was the anniversary of the day Lydia and I first crossed paths. And in less than a month, we were supposed to get married. The date had already been chosen. The venue booked. Invitations quietly prepared. Or at least, they had been. Then 3 months ago, everything began to change. That was when Phineas returned from overseas. Lydia introduced him to the company herself, saying the team needed new energy. Fresh ideas. Someone young and dynamic. He became her assistant almost overnight. At first, it seemed harmless. The guy walked into the office carrying trays of coffee for everyone like he was hosting a morning talk show. Smiling, greeting people, remembering names. Within a week, he had half the department praising him. Within a month, it felt like he had always been there. He had a talent for showing up at the perfect moment. If Lydia needed a report, he already had it in his hand. If she hesitated during a meeting, he would offer exactly the suggestion she wanted to hear. It was almost impressive. He complimented people effortlessly, joked with them, made them feel important. Naturally, everyone loved him. Compared to him, I looked like the complete opposite. I wasn't the type who joked around in the office. Small talk bored me. I preferred quiet dinners, calm conversations, and planning things carefully. That difference slowly turned into distance. Phineas always addressed me politely. "Brother Dommy." The words sounded respectful, but his eyes told a different story. Whenever Lydia and I were together, he had a strange habit of bringing up stories from their school days. Little memories that made her laugh. If Lydia looked tired after work, he would shift the topic to something nostalgic, something comfortable. And every time she laughed, he would glance at me with that same faint, apologetic smile. Except it never felt like an apology. More like a challenge. Over time, Lydia's attitude toward me began to change too. At first it was subtle. A quick comparison here. A careless comment there. She would laugh at one of Phineas's ridiculous jokes like it was the funniest thing in the world. But when I spent an hour choosing the perfect restaurant for dinner, she barely looked up from her phone. Phineas could exaggerate a compliment so obviously that anyone could hear the flattery. Yet Lydia listened to him patiently. Meanwhile, if I tried to talk about our future, she would sigh and rub her temples. "Dominic, I'm exhausted from work. Can we talk about this another time?" And that another time never came. Now, standing in the private room while everyone watched, Lydia looked at me like I was a stranger causing trouble. There was no warmth left in her eyes. Only irritation. "Dominic," she said firmly, "delete the post." Phineas immediately stepped in beside her. Yeah, brother Dommy, he added with a forced laugh. Just remove it, okay? Tonight's Lydia's birthday. Let's not ruin the ATM. His hand stopped in the air. I looked straight at Lydia. You think I'm embarrassing myself? I said calmly. Didn't you just tell me a moment ago to accept losing the game like a man? For a split second, Phineas's expression twitched. But he recovered quickly. Brother Dommy, come on, he said lightly. I was just joking earlier. Why are you taking it so seriously? A joke? I cut him off before he could continue. The room went quiet again. Some jokes, I said slowly, stop being jokes after you repeat them enough times. My eyes met his. And some people pretend for so long that eventually they start believing they actually belong somewhere. The meaning was obvious. Phineas's smile froze in place. For the first time that night, something darker flickered in his eyes. Around us, the whispers grew louder. People leaned closer, sensing the tension. Wow, this is getting uncomfortable. What's wrong with Dominic today? He's pushing things too far. Honestly, if he keeps acting like this, Lydia's definitely going to be angry. Lydia closed her eyes briefly, taking a slow breath. When she opened them again, her voice had turned cold. Dominic, she said, I'll say this one last time. Delete the post. Then apologize to Phineas. A quiet laugh escaped me. Without saying another word, I unlocked my phone. Everyone watched. My thumb moved across the screen. Instead of deleting the post, I added another sentence. Then I turned the screen slightly so they could see .osphere. He reached out like he was about to pat my shoulder. I moved slightly to the side. Right beneath the original message, a new line appeared. This is not a joke. I'm serious. Looking for someone willing to stay for a lifetime. I turned the phone so everyone could see the screen clearly. For a brief second, Lydia's composure cracked. Her eyes widened, the confidence on her face draining away like color fading from a painting. I lost the game, I said calmly. And I'm accepting the punishment. The room was completely quiet. But apologizing, my gaze drifted to the ring on her finger. A diamond ring I had spent an entire year saving for. I still remembered the day she first put it on. She had laughed, hugged me, and said she would never take it off. Now the memory felt distant. I won't do that. A few people quickly stepped in, trying to laugh things off, muttering about how everyone should relax. Lydia's breathing was uneven for a moment. Her eyes burned into me, but eventually she swallowed the anger and said nothing more about the post. When the time came to cut the cake, the atmosphere felt fragile. Lydia picked up the knife and looked around the room. Her gaze moved past me deliberately, like I wasn't even there. Phineas, she said, come help. He stepped forward immediately with a bright smile. Of course. They stood side by side in front of the cake, their hands overlapping around the handle of the knife. Too close. Their shoulders touched as they leaned in together. The room erupted in applause and playful teasing. I stood nearby, watching quietly, like someone who had wandered into the wrong celebration. After the candles were blown out and the cheers faded, Phineas reached into his pocket. He pulled out a small velvet box and opened it. Inside was a slim platinum bracelet covered in tiny sparkling diamonds. Lily, he said gently, using the nickname only close friends used. Happy birthday. The way he said it was soft, but everyone heard it. I had this made in France last month, he continued. I hope you like it. Lydia's face lit up instantly. Phineas, you actually remembered. As long as it's from you, she said warmly, of course I like it. Without hesitation, she slid the jade bracelet off her wrist and placed it on the nearby table. The movement was casual. Careless. As if it meant nothing. But that bracelet wasn't ordinary. My mother had given it to her personally before she passed away. It was meant to welcome Lydia into our family. An heirloom. Come on, Lydia said with a playful smile. Help me put it on. She extended her wrist toward him. Phineas carefully lifted the bracelet from the box and fastened it around her arm. His fingers brushed lightly against her skin. They exchanged a smile. Immediately the compliments started. That bracelet looks amazing. It's so elegant. Much better than that old jade one. Exactly. This one suits President Lin perfectly. And Assistant Phineas has such great taste. Each word landed like a slap I could hear clearly. Without saying anything, I walked over to the table. While everyone admired the diamonds, I quietly picked up the jade bracelet. The room grew quieter again. People noticed. Curiosity spread quickly. Lydia saw it too, her brows drawing together slightly. I held the bracelet in my palm and looked at her. If this old bracelet no longer suits President Lin, I said evenly, then it should return to where it belongs. The words cut through the room like a blade. Back to my mother. Silence fell. Lydia opened her mouth slightly, but no words came out. She probably hadn't expected me to say it so directly. Especially not in front of everyone. Phineas stepped in again, his smile returning like nothing had happened. "Brother Dommy," he said gently, "was that really necessary? Lydia just tried on a new gift. It's her birthday today. Why make things uncomfortable over a bracelet?" "I'm not making anything uncomfortable," I replied. "If she doesn't want it anymore, I'll take it back. So my mother's gift doesn't end up meaningless." After that, I didn't wait for anyone to respond. Ignoring the complicated expressions around me, I carefully placed the jade bracelet inside my coat pocket. Then I turned and walked out. Behind me, Lydia's voice followed like a sharp blade. "Take it then." She laughed coldly. "Do you really think I care about that ugly thing? It looks outdated anyway. I wouldn't wear it even if someone paid me. It would probably scratch my wrist." Phineas hurried after me and grabbed my arm. "Dommy, wait," he said in a low voice, though people nearby could still hear. "Don't act impulsively. President Lin is just angry right now. If you leave like this, things will get worse." I shook his hand off hard enough that he stumbled half a step. For a moment, the mask on his face almost slipped. "Phineas," I said coldly, "you're trying too hard." "Phineas." Lydia's voice snapped from behind. "Don't chase him. Let him go." I didn't look back. The private room felt suffocating, and the moment I stepped outside the hotel the cold night air hit my face. I leaned against my car and lit a cigarette. Only after the smoke filled my lungs did the tight pressure in my chest begin to loosen. My phone buzzed. A reply to the post. I opened the message. Someone had responded. Without even checking the photos they sent, I shared my location. "Come here," I typed. "I'll wait." Less than 20 minutes later, a small electric scooter rolled up to the curb. A girl hopped off and jogged toward me. "Brother Dommy?" she asked carefully. "Is that you?" "I'm Jane." I looked her over. Dyed hair. Short skirt. Heavy makeup. Exactly the kind of rebellious street-style people imagined when they heard the phrase, punk girl. Yet the way she spoke was gentle, almost shy. "Yeah," I said, putting out my cigarette. "Let's go." She followed me to the car quietly. Sitting in the passenger seat, she looked stiff, like she was afraid of touching anything. I drove us to a bar I visited sometimes. Not luxurious, but comfortable. We slid into a booth. I ordered her a beer and got myself a cola. Jane sipped her drink slowly, occasionally glancing at me like she wanted to ask something but wasn't sure how. She began softly. Before she could finish, loud voices suddenly echoed from the entrance. A group had just walked in. The sound was familiar. Too familiar. I looked toward the door. And couldn't help letting out a quiet, bitter laugh. Some people really had a talent for showing up exactly where they weren't wanted. The bar door swung open again. I looked up. Lydia walked in first, her heels clicking sharply against the floor. Behind her came Phineas and the same group from the party, still laughing like they owned the place. Phineas leaned close to her, whispering something in her ear. Whatever he said worked. Lydia's lips curved slightly, the irritation on her face finally easing. Then they noticed me. And the girl sitting across from me. Lydia stopped walking. The faint smile on her face froze, then slowly disappeared. Her eyes moved from me to Jane like cold blades. Phineas followed her gaze, and for a brief second something bright flashed in his eyes. Interest. But it vanished instantly, replaced by exaggerated surprise. Well, he said loudly enough for nearby tables to hear. "If it isn't Dommy." He glanced between me and Jane with obvious amusement. "That was quick. Just look at how she dresses." Her tone dripped with contempt. "Dominic, since when did your standards drop this low?" Another man laughed. "She's not even worthy of standing next to President Lin." Honestly, someone else added, "This just looks like a desperate attempt to get attention. He can't have the best anymore, so now he chooses the worst. Pathetic." Their voices overlapped, one after another. None of them were shouting. But every sentence carried a sting. Phineas stood among them, wearing that same calm smile. "All right, that's enough," he said lightly, raising his hands like he was trying to calm the crowd. "Brother Dommy probably just isn't thinking clearly tonight." Through it all, Lydia remained silent. Her posture was straight, chin slightly raised. She looked at us the way someone might watch a ridiculous scene in a movie. Detached. Yet the tight line of her lips and the anger flickering in her eyes told a different story. Maybe seeing me with someone like Jane felt like an insult to her pride. I ignored the noise around me. It sounded like buzzing insects. Taking a slow sip of my cola, I looked directly at Phineas. "Finished?" His smile didn't change. "Dommy, don't take it the wrong way," he replied smoothly. "We're just concerned about you." "Concerned?" I cut him off. My gaze moved past him to the woman who had insulted Jane earlier. Then I spoke calmly. "Lydia, keep your dog on a leash. The barking is annoying." The words landed heavily. Lydia's expression shifted instantly. Phineas's smile froze for a split second before he forced it back. "Dominic," he said, sounding disappointed, "how can you talk to President Lin like that?" I didn't bother answering him. Instead, I turned toward Jane. She had kept her head lowered the whole time. Her shoulders were trembling slightly. I couldn't tell if it was fear or anger. Lydia gave me one last icy glance before letting out a short laugh. "Don't waste time on them," she said to the others. "Let's get a drink." She turned away. Phineas followed immediately, his arm hovering behind her waist like a silent claim. The rest of the group gathered around them and moved to a large booth not far away. Even after sitting down, Phineas glanced toward us occasionally. That faint, calculating smile never left his face. I looked away. He wasn't worth the attention. "Jane," I said quietly. She looked up. "Call your friends. As many as you want. Tonight's on me." For a moment she just stared at me, unsure. When I nodded, she slowly pulled out her phone and started typing messages. Within half an hour, the entrance of the bar became lively. Groups of young women began arriving one after another. Bright hair colors. Bold outfits. Confident energy. They spotted Jane and quickly filled our booth. The once spacious seating area suddenly felt packed. "Jane, is this the guy you were talking about?" a girl with pink hair asked, leaning closer to inspect me. Another girl laughed. "Not bad at all. You really got lucky." Their personalities were open and relaxed. No hesitation. They ordered drinks, grabbed dice cups, and started games without needing anyone's permission. Music played. Dice clattered against the table. Laughter rose again and again. The dull atmosphere around our side of the bar disappeared completely. Before long, the energy from our booth spread across the room. Even people from other tables started glancing over. Phineas looked toward us several times, his expression hard to read. Lydia, however, never turned around. Her back stayed rigidly straight the entire time. I played a few rounds of dice with the girls. Every time I lost, I drank another sip of cola. They told ridiculous stories, joked loudly, and pulled me into their conversations. For the first time in a long while, everything felt simple. No tension. No expectations. Just noise, laughter, and an easy kind of freedom. By the time we finally left the bar, it was already late into the night. I paid the bill and walked outside with Jane. The night air in the parking lot was cold and quiet. Unfortunately, so were the people waiting there. Lydia and Phineas stood beside their car, clearly just leaving as well. When Lydia noticed Jane and me walking toward mine, her expression hardened immediately. She laughed softly, but there was nothing pleasant about it. "Dominic," she said, her voice dripping with sarcasm, "you work fast." Her eyes flicked toward Jane. "What is this? First meeting and you're already heading to a hotel?" Phineas didn't interrupt. He simply stood beside her, watching with interest, like someone waiting for the final act of a play. I opened the passenger door for Jane. "Get in." She slipped into the seat quietly. Only after closing the door did I look back at Lydia. A lazy smile crossed my face. "Why not?" Before she could respond, I walked around to the driver's side, started the engine, and pulled out of the parking lot. Through the rearview mirror, I saw Lydia standing under the dim lights. Her face looked stiff, almost twisted. I didn't go home that night. Instead, I drove to a 5-star hotel a few blocks away. At the front desk, I booked 2 rooms. Next to each other. Both with king-size beds. Jane blinked in surprise when she heard that, glancing at me as if she wanted to ask something. But she stayed silent. After the check-in process was finished, I handed her one of the key cards. "Get some rest," I said. She accepted the card carefully. "Thank you." We walked down the hallway together before stopping at our doors. She gave a small nod and went inside her room. I entered mine. After a shower, I lay on the bed staring at the dark ceiling. Just as I was about to close my eyes, my phone screen lit up. A new post appeared on my feed. It was from Phineas. There was only one photo. Taken from above. He was leaning against a headboard with his shirt off, one arm wrapped around a woman who looked completely drunk. The caption read, "Everything I've ever wanted, it's finally here." The woman's face had been blurred. But her long hair spilled across the pillow in a way I recognized instantly. And the room behind them was even more familiar. It was the master bedroom of the house I had personally designed. The house Lydia and I were supposed to live in after our wedding. For a moment, I stared at the photo. Then I smiled. Calmly, I tapped the screen, liked the post, and left a short comment. "If the mood is already perfect, you two might as well go register your marriage tomorrow." The next morning, before leaving the hotel, I left Jane some money. On a notepad from the room, I wrote a short message. "You seem like a good person. Try to find a stable job. Don't let people look down on you." Then I placed the note on the table and left. When I arrived at the company later, the whispers started immediately. That's him. The one who went to a hotel with that girl last night. He looked respectable before, guess appearances can be deceiving. President Lin must have been blind. Working with someone like that is embarrassing. I ignored every word. They were nothing more than background noise. Instead, I printed out a document and walked straight toward the president's office. Lydia was sitting behind the large desk when I entered. Her makeup was flawless as always, but the faint shadows under her eyes revealed she hadn't slept well. When she saw me, she paused. "What do you want?" Without speaking, I placed the document on her desk. "I'm resigning." She frowned slightly and picked up the paper. After scanning the contents, she suddenly looked up at me like I had just told the most ridiculous joke in the world. "Resigning? Dominic, what exactly are you doing? Is this about yesterday? Because of that little incident?" Her voice grew sharper. "You're really going to quit your job over something so small?" I met her gaze calmly. "I'm just tired. I want to rest." Lydia slammed the paper onto the desk. "Dominic, stop acting childish. All this drama because of a birthday joke? Or is it because of Phineas? You're really that fragile?" She stood up and pointed at the resignation letter. "You've worked here for 5 years. Yes, 5 years. From the day Lydia and I started dating, I had thrown myself into the company completely. Every idea. Every late night. Every ounce of energy. The Lin Group had grown from an average company into one of the most respected firms in the industry. And I had believed I was building something for both of us. Our future. Now, looking back, it felt almost ironic. "The company doesn't need me anymore," I said quietly. "And the reason, you understand better than anyone." "I don't understand," Lydia snapped. She crumpled the resignation letter into a ball and threw it to the floor. "I won't accept this. You're blowing things out of proportion." Just then, the office door suddenly opened. Several uniformed police officers walked inside. The atmosphere changed instantly. The officer in front stepped forward and showed his badge. His eyes settled on me. "Are you Dominic?" A small flicker of surprise passed through my mind, but my face remained calm. "Yes. We've received a report accusing you of suspected sexual assault. Please come with us and cooperate with the investigation." The words dropped into the room like a stone into still water. "Sexual assault?" Lydia gasped. She looked from the officers to me, completely stunned. "Who reported this?" "I did." A voice answered from the doorway. Phineas walked in slowly, stopping beside Lydia. His expression was full of righteous anger. "Lydia," he said firmly, pointing toward me. "Dominic did something unforgivable." Phineas spoke with a tone full of righteousness. "Last night I couldn't sleep," he said, shaking his head like the whole thing weighed heavily on him. "So I had someone look into the girl Dominic brought with him." He paused deliberately, letting the room lean in. "The girl he picked up, she's a minor." A wave of shock rippled through the office. Phineas continued, voice growing sharper. "He only knew her for a few hours and already took her to a hotel. If that isn't assault, then what is?" He turned toward the officers with complete confidence. "Officers, it was him. Everyone here can confirm he left with that girl last night." Lydia's face drained of color. Outside the office, the employees who had gathered to watch began whispering loudly. "A minor? That's disgusting. No wonder the police showed up. He's finished." The murmurs grew louder, filled with shock and contempt. I looked around slowly. At Phineas's face, twisted with satisfaction. At Lydia, standing frozen behind her desk. At the crowd outside the door, their expressions shifting from curiosity to judgment. And then I laughed. The sound echoed strangely in the silent office. No one expected it. I didn't even glance at Phineas. Instead, I looked straight at Lydia. "Do you see it now?" I said quietly. "This is the excellent assistant you personally brought into the company." Then I turned toward the police officers and extended my hands. My expression was calm. Almost relieved. "Let's go. I believe the law will sort out the truth." My eyes drifted toward the gray sky outside the window. As for everything else, let it end where it should. Cold metal cuffs closed around my wrists. The sharp click snapped through the room. At that moment Lydia seemed to wake up. "Wait." She stepped forward suddenly, her expression complicated. "Officer, could there be some kind of mistake?" She hesitated before continuing. "I'm his fiancée. We're supposed to get married next month." Her voice was no longer steady. "Dominic has worked at the company for 5 years. He's always been responsible and dedicated. His character," she faltered slightly. Perhaps memories from the night before flashed through her mind. But she still finished the sentence. "His character has always been good." Before the officer could respond, Phineas spoke again. "President Lin, how can you still defend him at a time like this? His tone was firm, almost disappointed. This is not a misunderstanding. He turned toward the officers again. Many people in this company can testify about his behavior. Phineas lowered his voice slightly, like he was revealing something shameful. I've personally seen Dominic behaving inappropriately toward female employees more than once. The room grew quieter. He continued calmly. There was an intern in the marketing department who resigned a while ago. She couldn't tolerate his harassment. And someone from administration complained privately that he often touched her in ways that made her uncomfortable. These things were never reported officially because of his position in the company, and because he was engaged to President Lin. As soon as he finished speaking, a few employees stepped forward. People who had been standing close to him since the beginning. Yes, I can confirm that. He always seemed a little suspicious. I remember once in the break room he stood way too close. I thought it was strange at the time. Who would have guessed he was like this? The accusations spread like wildfire. One voice after another. Soon it felt like the entire hallway was filled with condemnation. A hypocrite. A pervert. Disgusting. Lydia's face grew paler with every word. Dominic, she whispered. Her voice trembled slightly. I never imagined you were this kind of person. The disappointment in her eyes slowly turned into something colder. Revulsion. Beside her, Phineas stepped forward at the perfect moment and placed a supportive hand on her shoulder. President Lin, he said gently, now you've finally seen who he really is. Luckily the truth came out early. If you had discovered this after marrying him, it would have been even worse. His words sounded comforting. But they cut like knives. Lydia's remaining hesitation disappeared completely. Through it all, I said nothing. Not a single word in my defense. The officers didn't look surprised by the chaos around them. Situations like this were probably routine in their line of work. One of them spoke calmly. Dominic, a report has been filed and certain allegations have been made. You'll need to cooperate with our investigation. His tone remained steady. If there's been a misunderstanding, we'll determine that through proper procedures. Now please come with us. I nodded without protest. Turning around, I allowed them to guide me toward the door. The crowd outside instinctively moved aside, forming a narrow path as we walked through. Whispers followed us like a wave. Behind me, I heard Phineas speaking in a gentle, comforting tone. President Lin, don't be upset. Someone like him isn't worth your feelings. Lydia's response came cold and sharp. I'm not upset. Her voice carried no warmth at all. From today onward, I have nothing to do with him. A brief pause followed. And Dominic is fired. The hallway immediately filled with murmurs. I never expected this. You really can't judge a person by appearance. President Lin must feel terrible. Just then, the elevator doors opened. Lydia's father stepped out, smiling broadly as he walked with several guests. Lydia, this is Chairman Chan from the Chan Group. They're the leading company in the city and, his words stopped abruptly. He froze when he saw the scene in front of him. Police officers. Me standing there in handcuffs. And dozens of employees gathered around. What's going on here? He demanded sharply. Before Lydia could answer, Phineas rushed forward like someone eager to seize the moment. With a respectful smile, he gestured toward me. Chairman Lin, you arrived just in time. His voice grew louder, filled with moral outrage. This man is a disgrace. Last night, on President Lin's birthday, he took an underage girl to a hotel. I couldn't ignore something like that, so I contacted the police. People like him shouldn't be allowed to remain in this company. He spoke with such conviction that it sounded almost heroic. Lydia's father's face darkened immediately. His sharp gaze swept over me before shifting to Lydia, whose expression had already turned pale. Standing beside him, Chairman Chan observed everything quietly. His eyes were calm, but they missed nothing. At that moment, someone stepped forward from behind him. A young woman. Her appearance was completely different from the night before. The exaggerated makeup was gone. Her hair had returned to its natural black color, and she wore simple clothes, just a t-shirt and jeans. But the face was unmistakable. Jane, her eyes burned with anger as she looked straight at Phineas. You're lying. Her voice rang through the hallway. This gentleman never touched me. The sudden declaration stunned everyone. He booked 2 separate rooms, she continued firmly. I slept in one room, and he stayed in the other. On what basis are you accusing him? The confident smile on Phineas's face froze instantly. Chairman Chan's expression grew serious. He looked at the young woman beside him. Jane, he said quietly, are you telling the truth? Yes, Grandpa. She nodded without hesitation and pointed toward me. This man is a good person. He saw that I was young and told me I should find a proper job instead of hurting myself like that. He even left money for me so I could start fresh. He's nothing like what that man said. Jane then took a folded piece of paper from her pocket. The note I had written the night before. Cold sweat began forming on Lydia's father's forehead. His gaze moved from Jane, to Phineas, then finally to Chairman Chan, whose expression had become frighteningly serious. Chairman Chan, this must be some kind of misunderstanding, he said nervously. The lead officer immediately sensed the shift in the situation. He raised a hand, signaling his colleagues to pause. Then he approached Jane. Miss, please stay calm, he said. We need you to explain exactly what happened last night. You're certain Dominic didn't behave inappropriately. You stayed in separate rooms. I'm certain, Jane replied firmly. The hotel can confirm it. He asked for 2 rooms right from the start. She even provided the hotel's name. One of the officers quickly contacted them for verification. Within minutes, the confirmation arrived. The hotel records matched her statement. They even provided surveillance footage showing the 2 separate rooms being booked. Finally, Jane handed over her identification card. Only then did I realize something. I hadn't looked closely the night before. She wasn't underage at all. She was 21. Her youthful face had simply made her look younger. The atmosphere in the hallway changed instantly. Facts spoke louder than rumors. And these facts were crystal clear. The officer turned slowly toward Phineas. His expression had turned cold. Phineas, he said sternly, you reported that Dominic assaulted a minor. The alleged victim has now denied that accusation, and the evidence we've gathered supports her statement. How do you explain this? And the conclusive proof you mentioned earlier, what exactly was it based on? Phineas's lips trembled. His eyes darted around nervously before landing on Lydia. At that moment, her expression was complicated. Shock, embarrassment, anger, all tangled together. Lydia's father finally spoke, his voice heavy with restrained fury. Assistant Phineas. What exactly is going on here? Phineas completely lost his composure. I only heard it from others, he stammered. I thought it was true. I was worried President Lin might be deceived, but with the evidence already confirmed, his explanation sounded weak. Even ridiculous. Chairman Chan let out a cold laugh. His sharp gaze swept across Lydia's father and then rested on Phineas. When he looked at me, his expression softened slightly. It appears, he said calmly, that this was a deliberate attempt to ruin someone's reputation. He turned toward Lydia's father. Chairman Lin, the assistant your company hired seems to have a serious problem with his character. He didn't raise his voice. Yet every word carried undeniable weight. The police officers exchanged glances. At this point, the truth was obvious. The lead officer stepped closer to me. His tone had changed, and there was even a trace of apology in his eyes. Dominic, we understand the situation now. This appears to have been a misunderstanding. You've been wronged. He turned slightly toward his colleague. A moment later, the cold metal cuffs around my wrists were removed. The faint click echoed in the silent office. Inside the room, and even in the hallway outside, no one spoke. Everything had reversed too quickly. Just minutes ago, I had been the criminal. Now the truth had stripped the masks off everyone else. After the officers escorted Phineas away, the office fell into an eerie stillness. Lydia stood where she was for a long time. Finally, she turned toward me. Dominic, her voice sounded dry and strained. I'm sorry. I was misled by him. I misunderstood you. I didn't respond. I only looked at her. That silence seemed to hurt more than any accusation. She took a step closer. I truly didn't know he would do something like that, she said quickly. I didn't know that girl was Chairman Chan's granddaughter. What else didn't you know? I cut her off. My voice remained calm. That Phineas would make a false report to the police. That he would encourage others to spread rumors about me. That everyone here would suddenly accuse me of things I never did. The employees who had spoken earlier lowered their heads immediately. Several of them stepped back instinctively. Cold sweat formed on their foreheads. I continued quietly. Let me ask you something. If the girl from last night had just been an ordinary person, someone without the Chan family behind her, would you still be standing here apologizing to me? Lydia's face turned pale. Her lips parted, but no words came out. She had no answer. Dominic, Lydia's father finally said, stepping forward with a frown. Now that the truth has come out, can't you forgive her? She was misled. Deep down, she must have trusted you. You've been together for years. You're supposed to get married next month. He spread his hands as if trying to calm the situation. Is it really necessary to hold on to such a small matter? Be the bigger person. A small matter? I laughed quietly. Then I unlocked my phone. Chairman Lin, I said, turning the screen toward him, please look at this first. Then tell me if this marriage should still happen. On the screen was the photo Phineas had posted the night before. The bedroom. The blurred woman. The caption. Lydia's pupils shrank immediately. The color drained from her face. Her father saw the image too. His expression froze. For a moment he looked as if he couldn't breathe. Chairman Chan, who had been watching the entire scene calmly, suddenly let out a short laugh. The sound wasn't loud, but it landed sharply in the silent office. Chairman Lin, he said slowly, it seems your daughter and that assistant share similar talents. Their acting skills are quite remarkable. He paused briefly, then spoke with finality. In that case, all cooperation discussions between our companies are cancelled. Goodbye. Chairman Chan, please wait. Only then did Lydia's father panic. He hurried after him without caring about appearances anymore. This is all a misunderstanding. That assistant caused everything. My daughter is young and inexperienced. Please give us another chance. But Chairman Chan didn't stop. He walked away without even turning back. Jane, however, remained where she was. She walked over to me and looked up with bright eyes. Dominic, she said softly, this place feels suffocating. Do you want to leave with us? I met her clear gaze and smiled. All right. Let's go. I didn't look at Lydia again. I didn't acknowledge her father either, even though he seemed like he wanted to say something. Jane and I walked out of the building side by side. Outside, the sunlight was almost blinding after the tense atmosphere inside. Chairman Chan stopped and turned toward me. There was a thoughtful look in his eyes. Dominic, he asked, what do you plan to do next? I answered honestly. I haven't decided yet. I'll probably rest for a while first. Grandpa, Jane said suddenly, tugging at his sleeve, Dominic is talented. And he's a good